Hello, knowledge seekers. In this episode of 20-Minute Books, we delve into The Road to Unfreedom by Timothy Snyder, a compelling examination of the unsettling political climate that defines our era. Through an incisive narrative, Snyder reveals how Russian expansionism under Vladimir Putin has increasingly threatened the freedoms cherished in Europe and America. This strategic move played a pivotal role in pivotal events such as Brexit and the election of Donald Trump, marking a significant moment in the rise of right-wing populism across the globe. Timothy Snyder, an esteemed American author, and Richard C. Levin, professor of history at Yale University, brings his extensive knowledge of history and politics to explore the mechanisms of Russian influence. Snyder, known for his critically acclaimed works such as Bloodlands and On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century, offers an unflinching look at the tactics used by Russia to shape global politics. The Road to Unfreedom is an essential read for anyone aiming to comprehend the surge of right-wing populism, the intricate ways in which Russia impacted the 2016 US election, and the broader implications for freedom and democracy. It is particularly relevant for students and enthusiasts of political science, international relations, and history seeking to understand the current geopolitical landscape and its historical context. Join us as we explore the dark paths that lead away from freedom and the fight to reclaim it. The Road to Unfreedom, Russia, Europe, America. Introduction. Embarking on a journey through Putin's vision for a new world order. In the meticulously researched narrative by Timothy Snyder, an era of uncertainty unfolds before us, one marked by economic fluctuations and political upheavals. Events such as Brexit and Donald Trump's rise to power in the United States have changed the course of history. At the same time, extremist groups, especially on the political right, seem to be gaining unprecedented momentum. Gone are the days when we confidently anticipated the future as a linear progression from the present, a concept once viewed as the politics of inevitability. However, Snyder introduces us to a new paradigm that is gaining traction: the politics of eternity. This perspective traps us in a perpetual cycle of fear and paranoia, where imagined and real threats loom large, and the primary role of governance is perceived as protective rather than progressive. The focus of our journey is on one nation, Russia, and the man at its helm, Vladimir Putin, who, according to Snyder, is instrumental in steering the world towards this dystopian vision. As we delve into Snyder's analysis, we will uncover how Russia, under Putin's guidance, is working to dismantle the European Union from within, how Putin positioned himself as the unfortunate victim in the tragedy of Malaysian Airlines Flight 17, and how Russia played a pivotal role in ensuring Donald Trump's election as President of the United States. This exploration is not just an account of geopolitical maneuvers, but a revelation of a broader strategy to reshape the world order. Set against the backdrop of global instability, Snyder's insights offer a chilling glimpse into the ambitions of one of the world's most enigmatic leaders, and the profound implications these ambitions have for the future of global politics. Join us as we unravel the intricate web woven by Vladimir Putin in his quest to usher in a new epoch, one defined not by the ideals of progress and unity, but by division and eternal conflict. Part 1. Ivan Ilyich's Legacy, the philosophical blueprint for Putin's Russia. On a pivotal day in March 2000, the people of Russia cast their votes in a presidential election that would not only determine their leader, but also set the country on a transformative path. The victor, Vladimir Putin, embarked on a reign that has reshaped Russia into what it is today. Little did the voters know that the ghost of Ivan Ilyin, a Russian philosopher who passed away in 1954, would play a significant role in shaping the nation's future under Putin's leadership. Ivan Ilyin witnessed the seismic shifts of the 1917 Russian Revolution, which catalyzed the rise of the Soviet Union and the establishment of a communist regime. However, Ilyine's beliefs stood in stark opposition to communism. He was a proponent of Christian fascism, drawing inspiration from Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini rather than from Lenin or Stalin. Following his exile in 1922, Ilyin envisaged a Russia that embraced the fascist ideologies of the 1920s and 1930s, a nation where societal anxieties caused by economic and social turmoil were redirected towards the veneration of a messianic figure. This leader, perceived as the nation's savior, would promise protection from both real and imagined external dangers, celebrating violence over rational thought and prioritizing propaganda over factual discourse. Ilyin's blueprint for Russia was extreme, even by the standards of the European fascist states of his time. He believed that the existence of even a single genuine political party was a folly. While a semblance of a multi-party system could serve the ceremonial purpose of conducting elections, all substantial power should be vested in an individual, the ruler who would hold sway over the government, judiciary, and military. For decades, Ilyin's radical theories remained suppressed, out of reach and out of mind. However, the liberalization of Russian media in the 1990s breathed new life into his works, reintroducing his ideologies to the public. The momentum only grew after Putin's election in 2000. Ilyin's writings were distributed among students and government officials, and Putin orchestrated the reburial of Ilyin's remains in Moscow in 2005, rekindling his memory. Putin's Russia, as it stands today, is a realization of Ilyin's visions of a right-wing autocracy forged meticulously through the manipulation of ideology and power. To fully understand the evolution of this political landscape, we must revisit the events of September 1999, a period that marked the beginning of Putin's ascent to acting president following Boris Yeltsin's resignation, setting the stage for the dramatic transformation of Russia. Part 2: Putin's masterstroke, engineering a dystopian reality from Ilyin's vision. In the twilight of the 20th century, Russia found itself embroiled in a chilling series of bombings that claimed 293 lives in September 1999. Amidst this chaos, Vladimir Putin, who had assumed the role of prime minister just a month prior, took decisive action. He pinpointed the source of the terror, separatist fighters from the restive region of Chechnya, and launched a military onslaught. This decisive action was the nascent step in aligning Russia with Ivan Ilyin's ideology, which advocated for unity in the face of perceived external threats. The impact on Putin's political standing was immediate and electrifying. From a virtually unknown political figure with a mere 2% approval rating, Putin soared to a commanding 35% in the wake of the Second Chechen War. By March 2000, as the conflict raged on, Putin secured the presidency, marking the commencement of Russia's slide toward the dystopian vision outlined by Ilyin. Central to Putin's strategy was the astute use of propaganda, masterminded by Vladislav Surkov. Surkov's expertise lay in exploiting crises to consolidate Putin's authority. A notable instance occurred in 2002, when a terrorist siege in Moscow was used as a pretense to bring major television networks under state control, further tightening the government's grasp on the narrative. The economic challenges of 2008 to 2009 tested Putin's hold on power, with independent observers estimating only a 26% vote share for Putin's party in the 2011 parliamentary elections, a stark contrast to the official claim of 49%. The blatant manipulation of election results ignited mass protests, offering Putin the opportunity to cast a new villain in the national saga, the West. The narrative quickly shifted on state television, depicting anti-Putin demonstrators as minions of Western influence, thus framing the United States and the European Union as enemies of Russian sovereignty. In the ensuing political climate, Putin doubled down on integrating Ilyin's principles into the fabric of Russian governance, Legislation was enacted to empower FSB officers with unprecedented authority, criminalize defamation against the state, and stigmatize foreign NGOs as foreign agents. These measures were emblematic of a broader strategy to enshrine the politics of eternity in Russia, effectively realizing Ilyin's vision of a nation perennially besieged by external adversaries, ruled by a single, unassailable leader. Under Putin, Russia has been steered towards a reality where fear and control are woven into the national psyche, embodying Ilyin's dystopian ideals. The journey from the tumultuous days of 1999 to the present encapsulates a deliberate transformation, cementing Putin's legacy as the architect of a new era, one that mirrors the dark aspirations of Ivan Ilyin. Part 3. Putin's Shadow War, the covert campaign to dismantle the European Union. In the aftermath of World War II, a beleaguered Germany and a waning France embarked on a mission of self-preservation, leading to the creation of what we know today as the European Union, a formidable economic force comprised of 28 member states. For years, Russia maintained its stature as the lone European entity that hadn't sought EU membership as a means of bolstering its diminishing global influence. Viewing itself as a peer rather than a petitioner, Russia pursued a doctrine of harmonious coexistence, with Putin himself advocating for partnerships and even supporting Ukraine's potential integration into the EU. However, the landscape dramatically shifted post-2011 when the European Union was recast as an adversary in the Kremlin's narrative, encroaching on Russia's sovereignty. In 2013, Putin embraced a radical recalibration of Russia's stance. Echoing the shadowy tenets of Ivan Ilyin, the new directive wasn't for Russia to align with European standards, but for Europe to be Russified, for the EU to be infected by the very dystopian ideologies that Russia harbored, under the guise of protecting Russian sovereignty. This ambition materialized into the concept of Eurasia, a geopolitical challenger to the EU envisioned by Putin in 2012. This proposed union aimed to assert dominance from the Pacific shores of Russia to the Atlantic edges of Europe, marking a stark pivot in Russia's foreign policy. However, the strategy to manifest this vision was not one of overt aggression, but of subterfuge and cyber warfare. Russian operatives embarked on a sophisticated campaign to undermine the EU from within, employing cyber attacks and propaganda to fan the flames of discord and nationalism. In a stark demonstration of this new warfare, Russian hackers in April 2015 commandeered a French television broadcast, swapping it with a fear-inducing message falsely attributed to ISIS. This act of cyber terrorism was a calculated move to sow panic and discord among the populace. This strategy of stoking fear bore tangible political outcomes. Marine Le Pen's far-right campaign in France, underscored by Islamophobia and anti-immigrant sentiment, surged to unprecedented heights, capturing 34% of the vote in the presidential election, a monumental feat for a far-right candidate in the post-war era. Meanwhile, across the English Channel, Russian digital saboteurs unleashed a barrage of anti-EU propaganda targeting British voters, with hundreds of pro-Brexit Twitter accounts traced back to the Kremlin's online army. The culmination of this covert campaign was the 2016 Brexit referendum, where a slim majority of 52% opted to sever ties with the EU. Through these surreptitious efforts, Putin's vision of a weakened, divided Europe began to crystallize, marking a dark triumph for his Eurasian agenda and representing a profound shift in the geopolitical landscape, all achieved not through the might of armies, but through the silent, virulent spread of fear and division. Part 4. Russia's shadow looms over Ukraine, the struggle for sovereignty and European integration. As Vladimir Putin's vision for a Eurasian empire threatened to unravel the European Union's coherence, a dramatic crisis unfolded at Russia's doorstep. Ukraine stood on the cusp of a pivotal moment in 2013, teetering between joining the European community through an association agreement or succumbing to the gravitational pull of Russia's orbit. Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych, initially supportive of the EU agreement, performed a sudden and decisive about-face following discussions with Putin, derailing Ukraine's European ambitions. This abrupt reversal on November 21, 2013, ignited widespread protests across Ukraine, marking the beginning of a transformative period in the nation's history. Initially centered around the EU agreement, the nature of the protests rapidly evolved following brutal attempts by riot police to disband the demonstrations. Fueled by a demand for dignity and resistance against oppression, the Ukrainian populace found itself in a direct confrontation with authoritarian forces. The situation escalated further when Russian intelligence agents were dispatched to Ukraine in late December to quell the unrest. By January 2014, authoritarian laws mirroring those previously enacted in Russia were introduced by Yanukovych, effectively outlawing public assembly and pressuring international NGOs to label themselves as foreign agents. The killing of two protesters on January the 22nd acted as a catalyst, transforming public frustration into a nationwide demand for Yanukovych's resignation. Faced with the unexpected potency of Ukrainian resistance, Russian authorities pivoted towards a more destructive strategy. Propaganda machines, like the Internet Research Agency that played a role in the Brexit campaign, were set into motion, spreading falsehoods about Ukrainian actions in Crimea. This campaign of disinformation set the stage for a more direct intervention. In a chilling climax, Russian operatives, under the guise of local defense forces, initiated a series of fatal confrontations that culminated in the tragic deaths of nearly 100 Ukrainian protesters. Yanukovych's political support crumbled in the aftermath, forcing him to flee to Moscow. Shortly thereafter, in a stark demonstration of military aggression, Russia annexed Crimea following a controversial referendum, further deepening Ukraine's crisis. Despite achieving a semblance of victory in derailing Ukraine's EU aspirations, Putin's actions had irrevocably altered Ukraine's trajectory towards European integration. In the wake of these tumultuous events, Ukraine, though battered and divided, managed to sign the association agreement with the EU. However, the journey towards full integration had become significantly more complex, hindered by the physical and political scars left by Russia's imperialistic maneuvers. Amidst the ashes of conflict, Ukraine's resilience shone through, marking a defiant stand against Putin's Eurasian dream, albeit at a profound cost. Part 5. The Shadow Play: Russia's Global Web of Propaganda and Disinformation. In a calculated stride towards further instability in Ukraine and beyond, Russia amplified its campaign of strategic misinformation, wielding propaganda as a double-edged sword both domestically and internationally. The narrative spun around the pro-Russian separatists in southeastern Ukraine was a telling example, framing Russia as the savior of oppressed ethnic Russians, despite the apparent aggression on Ukraine's sovereignty. The manipulation of public perception took a darker turn, following the tragic downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 on July 17, 2014, which claimed the lives of all 298 passengers and crew. Despite overwhelming evidence pointing to Russia's involvement, the propaganda machinery swiftly deflected blame onto Ukraine. Russian media spun tales of a botched assassination attempt on Putin, casting Russia, and specifically Putin, as the true victims of a nefarious European conspiracy. This narrative of victimhood wasn't confined to the Russian population. On the international stage, Putin engaged in a campaign of strategic relativism, aiming to undermine the standing of global adversaries not through overt warfare or economic competition, but through the cultivation of internal discord and the elevation of extremist elements. Germany became a prime target in this scheme, especially after Chancellor Angela Merkel's humanitarian stance on refugees in 2014. Putin saw an opportunity in the refugee crisis, heightening military actions in Syria to exacerbate the flow of refugees into Europe and consequently Germany. The aim was clear: to inflame anti-immigrant sentiment, bolstering support for far-right movements like the Alternative for Germany, AfD. The campaign was multifaceted, combining military tactics with disinformation efforts. A particularly egregious instance involved a Russian-German teenager whose fabricated account of being assaulted by refugees was seized upon by Russian state media and officials despite being conclusively debunked. This story, though falsified, ignited outrage among German right-wing groups and strained Merkel's political standing, culminating in significant losses for her party in the 2017 elections and a historic entrance for the AfD into parliament. Through these actions, Russia demonstrated a sinister proficiency in the politics of eternity, constructing an alternate reality where Russia perennially stands as the besieged bastion of virtue against a morally bankrupt West. This strategic deployment of propaganda, both at home and abroad, reveals a concerted effort to manipulate public perceptions and international politics, sowing division and discord in pursuit of geopolitical ambitions. Part 6. The Digital Chess Game: How Russia Moved to Checkmate the U.S. Political Landscape. Following strategic maneuvers in both the Brexit referendum and the tumultuous events of Ukraine, Vladimir Putin set his sights on a grander stage: the United States. The objective was clear: to see the U.S., a long-standing rival, descend into dysfunction and discord, thereby affirming Russia's geopolitical might. The initial phase of this grand strategy involved digital espionage, with Russian operatives infiltrating top-tier American cybersecurity defenses as early as 2015, breaching networks of critical institutions like the White House and the State Department. The ambition was not merely to spy, but to lay the groundwork for a more consequential operation: the elevation of Donald Trump to the presidency, thereby instigating America's tilt towards the politics of eternity. To ensure Trump had a fighting chance in the electoral arena, his campaign needed financial buoyancy. In an intriguing twist, Trump's real estate assets witnessed a surge in purchases by shell companies, transactions that, upon scrutiny, bore the fingerprints of Russian oligarchs. This influx of capital in the lead-up to the election hinted at a covert endeavor to fortify Trump's bid for the White House. But the Kremlin's support wasn't purely financial. A digital onslaught was unleashed to sway American public opinion in Trump's favor, targeting the very core of democracy, the electoral process. The scale of this cyber war was staggering, with a significant portion of the American electorate encountering Russian propaganda throughout the 2015-16 campaign. In a last-minute cleanup operation, Facebook deactivated millions of falsified accounts designed to disseminate Kremlin-backed narratives. A crowning moment of this cyber sabotage was the strategic release of emails from Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, John Podesta. Timed to deflect attention from Trump's lewd comments about women, the email dump was a calculated move to undermine his political rival and maintain his campaign's momentum. The culmination of these efforts came on November 8, 2016, when Donald Trump clinched the presidency. This victory was not merely a win for Trump, but a vindication of Putin's strategic relativism, demarking a shift in the U.S. towards a reality mirroring Russia's divisive and inequitable structure. The ramifications of Trump's leadership, exemplified by policies like the 2017 tax bill, underscored this trend. The legislation's potential to exacerbate income inequality drew international concern, with dire warnings that such trajectories could render the U.S. a paragon of disparity, surpassing even Russia, the archetypal model of societal inequality. In this grand chess game of international politics, Russia's strategic incursions into the American democratic process marked a pivotal moment, not only altering the course of U.S. history, but also reshaping the landscape of global power dynamics in the pursuit of a new world order dominated by the politics of eternity. Final summary. At the heart of contemporary Russian politics lies the enigmatic and somewhat sinister influence of Ivan Ilyin, a fascist philosopher whose ideals have shaped the trajectory of the nation under President Vladimir Putin. Ilyin's vision, centered around the politics of eternity, positions Russia in a perpetual struggle against perceived adversaries, casting its societal woes as the direct consequence of external threats, both imagined and real. Throughout Putin's tenure, this philosophy has been meticulously woven into the fabric of Russian governance and foreign policy. Domestically, it has manifested as a combination of repressive laws, stringent control over information, and the glorification of Putin as the nation's savior. On the international stage, this ideology has propelled Russia into actions aimed at undermining the European Union, destabilizing Ukraine, and influencing the political landscapes of sovereign nations. A pivotal aspect of Russia's expansionist agenda was the endeavor to prevent Ukraine from deepening its ties with the European Union, fearing that such a move would thwart its Eurasian ambitions. This led to a series of covert operations and military interventions designed to keep Ukraine within its sphere of influence. But Putin's aspirations did not stop at Ukraine's borders. In a bold move to reshape the global order, Russia intervened in the Brexit referendum and the 2016 US presidential election. Through a combination of cyber warfare, disinformation campaigns, and strategic financial support, Russia aimed to install leaders and influence political outcomes that were more amenable to its interests, culminating in the successful elevation of Donald Trump to the presidency. The philosophy of Ivan Ilyin, through the machinations of Vladimir Putin, has thus not only redrawn the map of Russian domestic politics but also left an indelible mark on the world stage. Russia's drift towards a dystopian reality, rooted in eternal conflict with imagined enemies, serves not only as a means of consolidating power internally but also as a strategy for asserting Russian dominance globally. The road to unfreedom, it seems, is paved with the aspirations of a nation determined to redefine its place in the world order, regardless of the cost to global stability and democratic principles. Thank you for joining me today on this journey of learning and discovery as we explored the insights of another thought-provoking book in our growing library of knowledge. If you've enjoyed our time together, please take a moment to follow our podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and share 20-minute books with other knowledge seekers. Your support truly means a lot. Don't forget to join me again in the next episode, where we will delve into another enriching book. Until then, happy reading and happy listening.